They're being included in the list cuts, but can the Louisville Cardinals actually land one of the elite 2025 recruits? Well, in the case of Shelton Henderson, it's going to be an uphill battle for a variety of reasons for Pat Kelsey's program. We'll explain on today's episode of Locked On Louisville.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what is going on, everyone? Welcome into this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dalton Pence. I want to take this time to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free and available on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. The sports have stopped sporting like we want them to, but for the remainder of the summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Louisville's been included in a variety of different list cuts for various 2024 basketball prospects. The most recent one is highly rising player Shelton Henderson, the borderline five-star prospect, cut his list to 6. Louisville involved, but going to be a tremendous uphill battle for the team. We'll then switch over to the football side of things. Unfortunately, 2 key injuries to report that will undoubtedly hurt this team this season, and then we'll conclude the show by diving into a weekly mailbag. So we begin on the basketball side of things. Yesterday's episode was all about recruiting. We broke down the Cardinals' chances to land 3 players, Darren Peterson, Lunda Jamison, and Ian Inman, all 3 respectively, cut their lists over the past week, and Shelton Henderson followed that trend. Henderson has risen up exponentially in the rankings to, at the current moment, he's ranked as a top 20 player, well, really depending on whichever service you utilize, 18th on 24/7 Sports, 25th on the composite. But nonetheless, the 6'6" small forward from Bel Air, Texas, is a phenomenal player on both ends of the court. But he just cut his list to 6. The Cardinals were included on that list. Texas Tech, Texas, LSU, Houston, and Duke to round out the final numbers. Now, we had talked about this prospect back in June 19th. It was announced that for the moment, Henderson has scheduled an official visit for the Cardinals program for the weekend of August 23rd. That is obviously subject to change because things change like the wind when it comes to recruiting. However, I haven't seen anything to suggest otherwise, which is really good news. You hope that he ultimately ends up taking that official visit and Louisville makes a lasting impression. There are 2 reasons, well, actually, really 3 reasons why I think that this is one of those that I would be pleasantly surprised if Henderson chose the Cardinals. Now, I think to understand why Louisville is on that or in this mix, you have to understand sort of what the allure is with the Cardinals program. And he has cited his relationship with Pat Kelsey that has grown, and then assistant coach Ronnie Hamilton. Hamilton also serving as an assistant for LSU fairly recently. And with the Tigers in the mix, it seems like, that relationship was built there. But that has opened the door for the Cardinals. So being in the top 6 is notable. But like every recruitment, it feels like there is a tier list within that final group for the most part. Sometimes there's not, and sometimes it's wide open. But other times it feels like there's a clear-cut priority list intact. At this point, I said that there's 3 reasons as to why I think this is going to be an uphill battle. Number 1, Duke. Duke has, John Calipari was sort of the pioneer at Kentucky for the one-and-done recruiting, until Duke started to follow suit back in the 2015 or 2014 class with Jaleel Okafor, Tyus Jones, Justice Winslow. Ever since then, it's been the Blue Devils that have basically gotten the best of the best in the country for the most part. And that's not really going to change. We've seen, even with Coach K retiring, John Shire's been able to do the same thing. And when Duke comes calling, it's really challenging to turn them away. Most of the crystal balls and future projections and predictions have slated Duke as the eventual choice for Shelton Henderson, which obviously doesn't give you a ton of optimism moving forward in this recruitment. The only thing that you can hope for, and this is sort of a long shot, is that multiple players, I don't think one player is enough. You would have to have multiple players at his position or that would play that same role commit beforehand, because Henderson is a top 25 player, and I'm not, overlooking that ranking, but Duke is involved with the top 5, the top 10. So if you get a couple of top 10 recruits, maybe Henderson gets overlooked a little bit and isn't treated as much of a priority as, per se, any of the other teams on the list would treat Henderson. So that's the hope if you're a Louisville fan or really a fan of any team on this list, is that Duke gives away his spot, which, again, long shot it feels like, but ultimately, that's the hope. The second thing is that he plays on the Nike EYBL. You very rarely ever see a highly rated elite level prospect in college basketball, or high school basketball, I should say, go from a Nike EYBL team on the AAU circuit to an Adidas program. I understand that shoe money doesn't have the stronghold on recruiting that it did, let's say, 5 years ago, with NIL sort of taking the top spot there, but it still does matter. So until we see that trend start to break, I'm not really going to put too much optimism into this situation. So you have Duke, Nike school. He plays for a Nike EYBL team. It feels like you're down in the count 0-2, right? And judging by the top 6, it seems like this could very well turn into a Lone Star battle. A Lone Star State battle, I should say. Let's say Duke is not the choice for some reason. I don't think that Louisville is number 2 or even number 3 in this recruitment right now. I think that those are given to Houston and Texas interchangeably. I whatever program you want to put ahead of the other, it's up to you. He's scheduled the Texas official visit. He's from Bel Air, so for geographical purposes, Bel Air is in the southwestern portion of Harris County, which is in that southwest corridor of Houston, sort of by Sugar Land, Baytown. Really good competition. It's sort of right outside of that Houston metro. So Houston being on the list, Jordan School, with obviously the Nike ties, Kelvin Sampson and company have had a ton of success over the past couple seasons with the Cougars, and Houston right in the mix here. And then Texas with the NIL that they have with the Nike connection there. You can form obvious conclusions and connect the dots as to why these schools are included. You have Texas Tech also in the state, although it's in Lubbock, and then LSU, which is sort of the neighbors to the east part of the state, which is where Houston's at. So there's the connection to Baton Rouge. So, I mean, would I be too pessimistic to suggest that Louisville is like 5 or 6 in this recruitment? I don't think that that's pessimistic whatsoever. I think it's realistic. And I know that there's people that will comment in the section, oh, you always got to be so pessimistic. I'm not going to sit here and in good faith look into the camera and say, yeah, Louisville is number 2 or 3 in this recruitment, when it's not likely that that's the case. Now, let's call it how it is. On August 6th, things might be different then than they will be September 6th. Things change all the time. Things can change daily. So, again, for the Cardinals, it's the hope that you get the visit and wow him on the visit, pitch a very attractive NIL offer, give him a solid plan as to how you're going to help him reach his goals and factor him into your goals, and just try your best at the end of the day. This is one of the elite players that Louisville is involved with that I think it's going to be the most challenging to get. Now, I think it's significant. 2 things are true at one time. I think it's significant that Louisville is in the mix here, right? I also think that there are levels to it within a tier list like this. And I think that if you told me, I think it's Duke is in tier 1, Houston and Texas in tier 2, LSU, Texas Tech, and Louisville in tier 3. Now, can the Cardinals get really competitive in this recruitment? I think that there is the opportunity. I don't think that if they weren't included, then no. But if Louisville's included in a list cut, I firmly believe that unless there are like underlying motives for putting Louisville in there, that the Cardinals have a chance to land a certain player. And let's hope that that is the case. He's been fantastic in 36 games as a junior, 22 points a game, basically 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, 1.5 blocks while shooting 56% from the field. He was fantastic playing for, I think it was Bel Air High School, wasn't it? Yeah, Bel Air High School. 6'6", 220 pounds, rose up the national boards very, very quickly, has great tools when it comes to reaching his potential. I think that there's the potential to be a primary creator. I don't know about facilitator, but primary creator. Really solid college-ready body, great feel for the game and intangibles, and also fantastic shooting. So, elite player. I think he's a top 20 guy. I think by the end of the summer, he's going to be a 5-star ranked player. Louisville's got their work cut out for them in this recruitment, and I hope that they are able to make the ground up and get really, really involved. That is definitely the hope, but at this point, it feels like it's Duke/Texas/Houston's battle to lose, but we will definitely keep our eye out on this recruitment. We are now going to switch over to the football side of things. Some really unfortunate news that we have to discuss. 2 injuries were announced by Jeff Brohm at Media Day. Not good news whatsoever. It's going to hurt Louisville on both sides of the football. We'll tell you how it is on the second segment of Locked on Louisville. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them tremendously. It's almost like breathing air for me, which is sort of toxic, but nonetheless, it is what it is. FanDuel has helped the dog days of summer, so to speak, by giving me boosts and bonuses daily, and they will give you the same opportunities, hooking up all customers with some great odds boosters. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. If you go to FanDuel.com, you can check out all of the baseball parlays that they've even suggested for you that are popular at the moment. Be sure to check those out. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And Cardinal fans, once again, I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, however, enjoy the Locked On College Football Podcast. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussion on the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, discussing things like conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, new college football expanded playoffs, and more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Jeff Brohm met with the media in the city for the Cardinals Media Day ahead of the 2024 college football season. He met with them on Friday, and unfortunately, he had some injury updates that some were sort of expected, but others, unfortunately, not. Now, good thing is some good news. He said that basically MJ Griffin is fully ready for fall camp, which is really, really nice to hear coming off of a season-ending leg injury in the fall camp last season. But some rough updates. It started with defensive end Mason Reiger. His status was up in the air all throughout all the spring, missed the spring, didn't have much of any type of update. We're really kept in the dark in that regard to where it left a lot of speculation. We haven't really heard much. Brohm cleared the air here, And this is exactly what he said. I'm going to read it verbatim so there is no twisting the words. Mason, unfortunately, had off-season knee surgery, and some things didn't go exactly the way he wanted, which caused it to push the return date back farther. Right now, he is rehabbing and will not be able to practice during fall camp. We'll see what happens during the season, but whether we can get him back or not during the season remains to be seen. That is a huge blow for the Cardinals, the second leading sack member last season. He had 5 sacks. Illinois native was a pivotal piece of this Cardinals defense last year, especially in the win over Notre Dame. This was one that we sort of hypothetically planned for. With us not hearing much, it sort of led those to fear for the worst, and unfortunately that seems to be the reality. He's going to at least miss the month of August. It doesn't really sound optimistic for the rest of the season, but I'm going to hold out hope that he is able to return and make a return at some point during the year. But at this point, you're going to need guys on the defensive line to step up and fill that void. Miles Jernigan, the California transfer, has stepped up opposite of the line of Ashton Gelati and has made some solid plays early on in fall camp. You need guys like Tremel Logan, Richard Kenley, 2 transfers from South Florida and Middle Tennessee State, respectively, also to play a key role in filling the void there. Some returning guys, Adonijah Green, TJ Capers, really talented. Are they in a position to where they can make some key contributions for this team coming up here in a month? That is the hope. And then you have some local guys that you can also, turn to, such as Selah Brown, Micah Carter, Sadiq Clemens. The list goes on there. Wu Spencer. All 4 of those guys can play on the interior. They also have the skills and have the experience of playing on the edge. So you're replacing not only Mason Reiger, but Stephen Herron. You don't have Tyler Barron. So you need some guys to step up on the defensive line, especially on the edge spots, and not having Reiger for at least the first, it feels like, couple weeks of the season, because if he's not going to be available for fall camp, once he gets back and cleared, that he's going to have to take some time to get worked up into football shape. So who knows at this point when we will see Reiger, if at all. So you sort of need other players to step up in his absence. A more clear injury picture, unfortunately, is that Lance Robinson will miss the entirety of the 2024 season. Jeff Brohm confirmed he got hurt on the first practice of fall camp, which was on Wednesday. Apparently had to be helped off the field. Reports out of camp saying that he had a brace on his knee. So all reports not confirmed, but seemingly leading to believe that it is a lower leg injury for Robinson. The Houston transfer was, in my opinion, going to be in the mix for Jeff Brohm's offensive line. 6'4", 295-pound transfer from Houston. Didn't really play much last season, played in that Holiday Bowl at right guard and didn't allow a pressure, which was really solid. He was a big part of the Houston offensive line in 2022, but didn't get much time in 2023. He will redshirt and hopefully be back for next season. But I think that he was going to factor into the 2 deep for the Cardinals. I didn't think he was going to start, but I think that he could have definitely been the backup at many different spots. Right guard being one of those, left guard, really anywhere except for center, you could see Lance Robinson potentially in the mix. And unfortunately, what this does for the Cardinals is it makes your room or margin for injury that much smaller. You really can't afford to have much more injury to the offensive line. And unfortunately, that is a physical spot, physical position to play. So losing a guy that, I think that you have quality depth, and Jeff Brohm has really contributed to that and added to it via the transfer portal. But you don't have enough to where you lose like 3 or 4 guys in the mix and you're still sitting comfortably. So I think one thing is you need guys like Jonathan Mendoza to play really well. You need Renato Brown to be back fully healthy. You need Trevante Sylvester to be as good as advertised. Maybe Austin Collins plays more at the guard spot than center, so that means Pete Nigra needs to be extremely solid and healthy at the center spot. Same goes with Michael Gonzalez on the left. Renato Brown on the right, and then you have Mendoza, you have Monroe Mills, Trevante Sylvester. You've still got a good nucleus, so I'm not going to say that it's time for panicking, but the depth could very well become a concern with another injury or two. And unfortunately, the first day of fall camp, you have a whole month before the season. So hopefully, wrap the guys up in bubble wrap and don't let them put pads on. No, I'm playing. The hope is that they can remain healthy and no major injuries throughout the duration of fall camp or at any point during this season, knock on wood. So two really, really tough injuries that Jeff Brohm had to announce. We wish them the best in speedy recovery. Also, I saw this come across my phone just a couple minutes ago. Former Louisville head coach Steve Cragthorpe has passed away. He was dealing with some health issues over the past, it seemed, decade or so. And unfortunately, it's been reported that the former Louisville head coach has passed away. So please join me in a brief moment of silence. Thank you. On the next segment of the show, we dive into the weekly mailbag after we tell you about our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home that formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the price you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fits only available to U.S. customers. And into the final segment of this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Thanks again for making us your first listen of the day. We dive into the weekly mailbag, some key questions that I'd like to go ahead and answer. The first one is, well, actually, all of these are about football except for one, 5 questions in total. The first one is, who do you think Louisville's first loss of the season will be to? Very interesting question. Thanks for putting me on the spot. I'm going to go, I think Louisville does what they did last year. I think they start out the season 6-0 and they lose that 7th game. My hot take is that the Cardinals beat Notre Dame and they lose to Miami. I think Miami is going to have a very good team. If Mario Cristobal doesn't hold his team back, then they have the talent to be very, very good. They almost beat the Cardinals down in Coral Gables last year. I was at that game, by the way. I think that that's the first game that they lose. I kind of went back and forth between Notre Dame and Miami, but I think the Cardinals win that game up in South Bend, and they lose to the Hurricanes. You mentioned trap games for the Cardinals on a show last week. Who do you think, if Louisville were to drop the game to the trap team, who would it be? Well, I think it'd be number one. I think it'd be SMU. SMU is going to be a lot better than people think, just because people don't really know much about them. Rhett Lashley runs a great system offensively, really high octane offense, and then Scott Simons, I forget the defense coordinator's name. They brought him back to Dallas, and he had a top 15 defense last year, albeit it was in the AAC. But again, I think that they're going to compete in the the Atlantic Coast Conference. Sorry, I was about to say the American Coast Conference. I was like, it doesn't work. But I think it's going to be SMU. They play the Mustangs in between the Notre Dame and Virginia week. It's right after that game up in South Bend. So I'm going to go with SMU here, but I think Georgia Tech is also a very legitimate answer that you could go with. Is there any way that you see any Louisville Cardinal in Heisman consideration? Really challenging. I mean, you look across the country, Jalen Milroe for Alabama. You have, what is his name? Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State will be in there. Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State, the Mississippi transfer, could be in the mix. The Tennessee quarterback. Going on down the line, Quinn Ewers from Texas, Jackson Arnold from Oklahoma. It would have to probably be Tyler Shuck. You would imagine it's going to be a quarterback. Shuck would have to have a fantastic statistical year. Louisville would have to win at least 10 games, and they would have to have some big-time style points to get in the mix, and they would have to really be in playoff consideration. So I don't think that they're going to have a Heisman Trophy candidate, and that's perfectly okay because they've only had, 2 since 2010, if you want to consider Teddy Bridgewater a Heisman candidate, which not a lot of people did. Lamar was really the only one. So continuing along, the last football question I have, Ja'Cory Brooks and Colin Lacey get discussed all the time, but I don't feel like people talk about Chris Bell enough. Why is it that Chris Bell's not getting the attention that he deserves? Well, I think Chris Bell had a fantastic breakout year. He was second on the team with 407 receiving yards last year. He had a breakout season. He got his first 2 catching touchdowns, or receiving touchdowns, catching touchdowns. Feels weird to say. 6'2" junior from Yazoo City, Mississippi, will likely be relied upon again to be the Cardinals' third receiver. I think it's just because of the additions that they brought into the program. Lacey and Brooks are going to be really good. I still do think Chris Bell can be a reliable piece in this receiving core, and I think he's definitely going to be playing a factor into why Louisville's offense is going to be more explosive than they were last season. So as much as he is getting not talked about a ton, I do feel like there is an appreciation for the Cardinals veteran, and I definitely share that appreciation. So final question is on the basketball side of things. With what we saw in the Bahamas, who do you believe will be our leading scorer? Again, it's really hard to make concrete takeaways from preseason in July. I'm not going to change my thought process. I'm going to say 3 players, and I think that it's going to come from this group: Cason Pryor, Terrence Edwards Jr., Corin Johnson. Your leading scorer will come from that group. If you made me pick one, I'm probably going to say Cason Pryor, with Terrence Edwards right behind him. Corin Johnson definitely right there in the mix as well. Just a heads up, unless something changes moving forward this week, there won't be an episode on Thursday morning. There will be episodes tomorrow morning, Friday morning, and there might be a weekend episode as well. We will begin our top 15 player rankings for the Louisville Cardinals ahead of the 2024 college football season. So just a heads up on where the scheduling is. But that is going to wrap up this Tuesday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here